Well, what, 6 days ago now, over in the Grand Prix of Czechia in Brno, for the first time in 6 years, a Japanese rider fired away from pole position. And for the first time in his top flight career, it was Ayagura that briefly led the field away under early pressure immediately from the two factory Ducatis of Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez. Bagnaia struck early, this nice move down the hill into turn 10, pushing Agura back into second place. His afternoon got slightly worse as Marc Marquez got through up the horsepower hill into turn 12. But this was the key move, 6 laps remaining. Marc Marquez setting himself up for back-to-back victories. Decisive with Marco Bezzecchi absent through suspension. Back-to-back wins in Balaton and Brno, which have now made Marc Marquez a serious contender as he hunts down an 8th MotoGP World Championship title. He has had his struggles, though, so far here this weekend in a Grand Prix of the Netherlands, which has been the Aprilia show. Aprilia, for the first time in their history, well, we thought their lockout of the front row of the grid in front of their home crowd at the Italian Grand Prix Mugello just a few weeks ago was something special. Well, they have gone even better here this morning in a sensational Q2 session. Jorge Martin on pole position, the 2024 world champion for the first time on the factory Aprilia. His first pole position since Australia, Phillip Island, all the way back in 2024. Just the 18th Aprilia pole position. 4 of those have come this year. All Aprilia top 4. Joining Martin on the front row of the grid is Ayagura. Back-to-back front row starts for the Japanese sensation, who really is starting to show some serious speed in time attack modes. And Marco Bezzecchi, back from his ban last weekend in Brno, he completes the front row of the grid in 3rd, having topped all 3 practice sessions so far. Ralph Fernandez, well, he will complete that Aprilia lockout of the top 4 in 4th place. A 2nd row of the grid, which also features 2 Italians, Pecco Bagnaia and Fabio De Gianantonio. 13 lap sprint then coming up in about 25 minutes time in the company of Matt Burt. Lewis will be in the commentary box. Jack Appleyard down in pit lane. We are going to be hearing shortly from KTM management about some ongoing technical issues for Pedro Acosta. The Ducati-bound Spanish star starts in the middle of row 3 in 8th place. 2 technical issues, yet more technical problems for KTM and their RC16. Acosta will be in between Marc Marquez and Fabio Quartararo on that 3rd row of the grid. Lewis, what can you say? I mean, this has been Aprilia's game. This has been Aprilia's show so far this weekend. They've locked out the top 4. It would be a major, major shock if we don't get a pair of all Aprilia podiums here this weekend now.
Yeah, it's the way it's looked from the very first lap of Friday morning when it looked like Marco Bezzecchi was going to be the leader of an all Aprilia front row. In the end, he was almost lucky to be on it at all. Of course, with Ralph Fernandez losing his best lap for track limits, which would have put him on pole, and Bezzecchi at the head of row 2. If Aprilia stay out of their own way, it feels like the path is clear for them to take victory here this afternoon. But we have seen Aprilia's trip over each other already this season. They know after the events of the last 2 Grand Prix weekends that this is a golden opportunity they cannot pass up.
Yes, absolutely. 2nd in the sprint last weekend. His first sprint podium went the way of Superfile Trackhouse Aprilia's Ayagura, back on the front row of the grid. This has been the tail of the tape so far for Agura this weekend in Assen. 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd. Do you get the trend? Is he going to pick up the gold medal for the very first time? And now, I'm sure you've been aware that there's been some high-profile technical issues for Pedro Acosta over in Brno last weekend. More issues coming the way of the 22-year-old Spaniard this morning here in Assen. Let's get some immediate reaction from the KTM camp. The boss, Akiayo, joins Jack.
Yeah, good afternoon to everybody at home. As you guys rightly say, the 2 more technical problems in this difficult period for KTM coming this morning, Aki. There's genuine concern with regards to the reliability of the RC16 at the moment. So have you managed to find some answers ahead of the sprint?
Oh yeah, of course, you know, MotoGP bike has many sensors to make bike work, and some of them also for safety reasons. And this morning, actually, when rider go over the curbs, let's say they trigger for the emergency mode of the bike, and that caused the stop of the bike. So there is nothing really wrong with the bike. Rider did everything correct, and but okay, we needed to react in the correct way, and now the problem is solved.
Yeah, as we can see, it was just Pedro Acosta with those issues. So as a result of his aggressive riding style that these sensors were being triggered.
No, I would not say this. I would say that he has correct riding style and he's doing well, but okay. Sometimes you arrive for some limits, let's say for the values or whatever. For sure, Pedro doing correctly and trying to do his best, but when you go over the curbs, bike is moving and okay, there was maybe some value which we never reached before, and unfortunately this morning we reached it. But now the problem is solved, and we go for the solid race.
That's great news. As you can imagine, given what happened in Barcelona, some concern with regards to the safety, but both KTM, race direction, 100% happy that all 4 bikes are willing to participate for the remainder of the weekend.
Yes, I just want to underline that this was nothing to do about Barcelona problem, that this was different problem as I explained, but yeah, now we go for the solid race.
Aki, thanks for clearing that up. Have a great race.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. Thanks to Red Bull KTM Factory Racing boss Aki Ayo. So it's Acosta's aggression running over the curbs in that final sector on that fast run to the final sector, which is just triggering a sensor which has caused the stoppages for Pedro Acosta. Confident that that issue has been solved, confident that they can have a solid sprint then coming up shortly, but those issues really did hit Acosta hard in terms of his grid position. 8th on the middle of that 3rd row of the grid. Best outside of the Aprilia Cup at the front of the grid will be Pecco Bagnaia, who has tasted so much success down the years here at his beloved Assen. Moto 3 winner, Moto 2 winner, a triple Moto GP winner. This though, 5th place of the grid, the first time in Assen. He's been off the front row since 2019, gives an indication of just how much Pecco loves this circuit. I suppose, Lewis, if anybody's going to take the fight to the Aprilias, it will be the 29-year-old Italian.
Yeah, Ducati won't enjoy being considered a part of a second tier in MotoGP behind the Aprilias, but that's ultimately what they've been so far this weekend. Bagnaia with a formidable Assen record, winner in 3 consecutive seasons, 22, 23 and 24. 2 of those were from pole position, winner in Moto 2, winner in Moto 3. So there's very little Pecco Bagnaia hasn't done around this Assen circuit, but as mentioned, hasn't done so from off the front row of the grid. Ducati's 5th, 6th and 7th on the grid. Bagnaia, Gian Antonio and Marc Marquez. Surely their best opportunities to try and disrupt the Aprilias on the opening lap and make their life difficult.
Starting last in this sprint and last in tomorrow's Grand Prix will be the Turk, Toprak Razgatlioglu. I've seen a lot of Turkish flags in the main grandstands opposite our commentary positions. So not lacking support is Toprak, but it's his equal worst qualifying of his maiden campaign. We were due to have 23 runners and riders here this weekend. Unfortunately, Gresini Ducati's Fermin Aldeguer, I'm sure you're aware of the news now. More bad news, unfortunately, for Aldeguer, who suffered a fracture to his left femur in early January. He was working his way back to his best form, wasn't he? Unfortunately, though, yesterday, another heavy crash for Aldeguer at turn 11. In practice, I saw him suffer a T7 vertebra fracture, which unfortunately is going to rule that out again from the remainder of this weekend's action, possibly the German Grand Prix at the Sachsenring in a couple of weeks' time. Speed of recovery, Fermin. We'll love to see you back in action very, very soon.
Good news for Gresini fans if you were watching us in qualifying earlier on and might have been concerned by Alex Marquez not taking part in Q2. As you can see there, 4th bike coming through the picture. Alex Marquez resting in Q2 with a view to starting this afternoon's Tito Sprint, and he does indeed start it from the back of row 4. Yeah,
missed Mugello, missed Balaton and withdrew halfway through the Brno Grand Prix last weekend. Couple of spills so far this weekend for the 30-year-old. I suppose if you're looking for positives as far as Alex goes, I mean, he was a real heavy old crash he had on that acceleration point between turn 10 and 11. You can see that there just at the bottom of your picture. That is where Alex tipped off Gresini Ducati yesterday. At least there was no aggravation to the neck fracture he suffered in that scary incident in Catalonia a few weeks ago. No aggravation as well to the 4 fractures he suffered in the right collarbone. But he's had a bit of a painful experience in Assen the last couple of years, hasn't he? As Alex, he was out of the Grand Prix here last year and suffering a hand fracture after contact with Pedro Acosta. So I think Alex is going to be relieved to get through this one relatively unscathed.
7 days ago in the sprint in Brno, Marco Bezzecchi must have felt as if the sky was falling in on his World Championship challenge. Came into it with a 20-point lead, lost a chunk of those points and lost his temper after crashing out, which led to that ban on the Sunday afternoon at Brno. He has an opportunity for a bit of redemption. Part 1 this afternoon, surely. Sprints have not been his strong point so far this season. He's crashed out of 4 of the 9 we've had so far this season. It would just be so MotoGP, wouldn't it? A week on from being banned after losing his temper in a sprint for Marco Bezzecchi to open his sprint account and first gold medal of the season. That will be the target for the points leader today.
4 sprint DNFs so far this season, 4 sprint wins. The first of them was right here in Assen back in 2023 when he was on the independent team Ducati at 4VR46. Hasn't been victorious on a sprint Saturday since the Australian Grand Prix in Phillip Island last year. He has thrown away a lot of points. The picture in terms of the top of the championship would look a lot healthier than 8 points coming into this chapter 10 of the campaign as we pick up Fabio Di Giannantonio. He's going to be at the back of that second row of the grid in 6th place. Of course, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on the starts here because for the first time, whole shot devices are no longer employed. They are no longer legal technology in the MotoGP World Championship. So for the first time in race action, they've had plenty of time to practice it, the world's best riders. But with whole shot devices banned from this Grand Prix of the Netherlands, you will not see anybody, well, they're not allowed to because they are now banned. It's a restricted tech. So it's going to be interesting to see who can manage that the best, who's going to get the drop on the field, who'll get the whole shot minus the whole shot device.
Yeah, who will get a little too much wheelie and drop back down the grid. Of course, they won't have the worry of disengaging the whole shot device when they brake for turn 1, which should make that initial braking into the first corner a little bit safer and a little bit easier for the MotoGP riders. Jorge Martin, as he cruises round to the grid with his Aprilia on eco mode, gets set to pull into a position which he got very used to in his Ducati days, pole position on a MotoGP grid, but a brand new experience for the 2024 world champion on board at Aprilia.
21st MotoGP pole position, his 42nd of his Grand Prix career. He's had to wait a long time for this initial one though at Aprilia. Phillip Island all the way back in 2024 feels like an awful long time ago, doesn't it? As Martin then comes to the front of the grid, he feels like in terms of the race pace over the longer distance tomorrow, 26 laps, the Tissot Grand Prix of the Netherlands, his teammate Bezzecchi just does have the edge, just has that slight upper hand. Some performance today by the 28-year-old Spaniard because he had a real heavy crash himself yesterday, losing the front at 230 kilometers an hour as he powered the RSGP through turn 12. No significant damage done to Jorge, who unfortunately, he's been super fast this weekend in Assen, but that crash yesterday does mean he remains the most prolific faller of the 2026 World Championship campaign. Fabio Di Giannantonio then, top Ducati in the championship, back of the second or in 6th place. Starts have not really been his strength so far in 2026 with a whole shot device. I wonder what Fabio and the crew think about starting this sprint minus the whole shot device. Let's get some thoughts from the boss, Pablo Nieto with Jack.
Yeah, great to be joined by Pablo on a weekend so far dominated by the Aprilias with the Ducatis just behind. It's 4 Aprilias, then 3 Ducatis, Pablo. Can you stop the Aprilias today? It feels like a big ask.
We have to try, no? But it's true that we can see that the performance of the bikes here with the Aprilia is they're a little bit better than us, but you never know what happened during the race. So we have to try to make a very good start, try to stop them, and then we will see what happens.
You mentioned the starts, no front devices for the very first time. Is that going to change anything? Is that going to change tactically how Fabio approaches the first corner?
For us could be a better solution, no? Because we saw it on the past that it wasn't one of the best points that he has. So maybe this one is a little bit advantage for us. So we will try to make a little bit better because always the first lap and the start from Dilla aren't not so good. So we will see what happens.
Thanks, Pablo. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jack. Thanks to Pablo Nieto. As you can see then, the graphic, all bar Cal Crutchlow, who were missing his information. Every single rider starting the sprint, medium front, soft rear tyre. No great surprise to see that, Lewis.
Yeah, the tyres don't really fall off much. Certainly the rear tyre doesn't fall off much. It's more of a front tyre limited circuit, this TT circuit. Assen, we saw through practice, riders were continuing to set personal best lap times longer and longer into a run. So tyre wear shouldn't be an issue. Perhaps maybe tyre temperature might be, given once again it is scorching hot here in Assen. The air temperature last time we saw it was 34 degrees. The track temperature will be around about the 50 mark. 13 laps of the sprint coming up ahead of us, and a Yamaha lines up at the back of row 3 after more qualifying heroics earlier on for Fabio Quartararo. What can he do from there? Paolo Pavesios with Jack.
Yeah, Paolo Pavesio up at the front end of the grid for the first time in a few Grand Prix. It's been a very tough period, but I imagine that was a bit of a relief to see Fabio fastest in Q1 up here at the sharp end. What can he now do in the sprint?
Being realistic, I think if we can finish the race in the top 10, it will be a good result. But then it's a race, and it's going to be a short and close race. So as always, we try to do, as always he does, pushing at the limit.
Fabio's talent was obvious in qualifying. Do you think that Yamaha, being the top Japanese manufacturer, papers over the cracks ever so slightly?
I think this is not really the race we want to do. Of course, we're looking to the top, but we also need to be humble and to understand the process we are in, just trying to work, and yeah, maybe also get some small satisfaction knowing that this is just the initial part of the journey.
Thanks, Paolo. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Yamaha boss Paolo Pavesio. That third row of the grid is a tasty one, isn't it? Led by reigning world champion Marc Marquez, only the second time in red, only the second time as a factory Ducati rider. He's off the first two rows of the grid. The only time he's qualified lower on the factory Desmond Stedici was at the Indonesian Grand Prix last year, and he qualified 9th. And we know what followed thereafter when Marc had a season-ending shoulder injury. Pedro Acosta won 8th place, and Fabio Quartararo qualifying inside the top 10 for only the 4th time so far in 2026.
Yeah, there will be fireworks, that's for sure, from that third row of the grid. Here's Toprak Razgatioglu, who's starting at the very back of the grid in 22nd place. The only way is forward for him. So we have factory Aprilia's first and third, for Trackhouse second and fourth, and potential victory challenge for both Ayagura and Ralph Fernandez. Davide Aprilia with Jack.
Davide, a brilliant Saturday morning for Trackhouse, for Aprilia as a whole, to have locked out the top 4 places. But as soon as we started focusing on the sprint, my mind went to that now famous quote from Paolo Bonora, asking for total respect. When you've got all 4 riders at the front, does it make you excited or nervous in equal measure?
I think more excited because, I mean, it's great to see 4 Aprilia in front. I mean, it means it's nice to see because it means that Aprilia is doing a great job, a good job. Of course, it's a big difference compare our race last year to the race this year, and this shows how big step has been done in terms of development and improvement. So nice to see. And the race, I mean, it's the race. Whatever you have a Aprilia guy or Ducati guy or whatever, it's you try to do your best. So of course you always hope that nothing happens, but I mean, they all know, they all respect each other. But it's not that you respect only Aprilia rider, you have to respect everybody, and that's his normal behavior that every rider has to have. So now it's a 4 Aprilia. Of course, somehow if something happens, it's a more glamour, but it could happen with any rider around. So I mean, let's see what we can do. We try to do our best, and of course, starting in this position, you try to win a race, and hopefully one of the Aprilia will win a race, and let's see, let's try.
I just in front of us here had a brilliant weekend in Brno last time out. How much do you think that experience is going to help him here?
Yeah, of course, every time you learn something, and of course the Brno race, the sprint and the main race on Sunday, I think taught him something, like maybe in terms of race strategy. I mean, the speed is not in discussion, but how you approach the race, maybe when you have to attack, when you have to wait, and whatever. And this is a learning process, and for sure, I believe he will use that experience and see if it will be useful.
Thanks, Davide. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Trackhouse Aprilia boss Davide Aprilia. The last and only time 3 Aprilia riders locked out the front row of the grid in history. Ralph Fernandez won the sprint in some stunning fashion at the Italian Grand Prix in Mugello. Ayagura now the only remaining Aprilia rider that's not yet been the collector of a gold medal on a sprint Saturday. Nobody has more sprint medals than Jorge Martin, 18 golds, 34 in total. So good, isn't he, in this short Saturday format? Is Jorge Martin. Well, perfect time to look at Pecco Bagnaia. We know how strong he is in Assen Grand Prix. Can he get the job done against this quartet of super fast Aprilias? And Marc Marquez coming from the third row of the grid. Let's get the thoughts of the Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi with Jack.
Yeah, let's focus on Pecco Bagnaia first, leading the Ducati charge against the Aprilias. Can he get in on the act? Can he stop this Aprilia domination?
No, because we are aware about this situation, because we know that in a racetrack like here in Assen or next one in Silverstone, there is a bit of lack of grip, and they perform better than us in this situation. But anyway, you can't be really competitive every racetrack in 22 racetrack, and it's obvious that Aprilia did a fantastic job on the technical side, and they have 4 fast riders. So it's a situation that we perfectly know.
On the other hand, for Mark, he spoke about it yesterday, but is this a weekend where he has to look big picture in terms of the championship, with the Saxon ring to come, with the summer break after that? Is this a weekend where seeing 2 checkered flags is the most important thing?
I think that the checkered flag, as you said, and collecting points, whatever they are, is the most important thing. We are still not yet in the middle of the season, so looking forward to collect points and maybe facing some good racetrack for us, like you mentioned, and we'll see.
Thanks, Davide. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi. You just get the feeling from lap 1 here yesterday morning, Marc Marquez kind of felt like that there was just maybe a little bit too much risk to really go gung-ho, go all out attack. He knows, as Davide Tardozzi just alluded to there, second half of the season, there are some massive chances for Marc Marquez. Of course, the next one being the German Grand Prix at the Saxon Ring, although he has cashed in on sprint Saturdays, hasn't he, the reigning world champion, despite the fact that he has crashed out of one sprint in Le Mans. He didn't obviously then take part in the Catalan sprint, but nobody so far this season has scored more Saturday afternoon sprints than the factory Ducati star. That just shows how good he has been actually on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah, Marc Marquez has taken 3 sprint wins this season, as you saw there. Several riders have taken more sprint points this season than Marco Bezzecchi. Of course, the bulk of the points handed out on Sundays, and Marco Bezzecchi has more Grand Prix Sunday victories than anyone else this season. But is there a bit of a mental sprint hurdle for Marco to climb here this afternoon?
Then just getting some last-minute instructions from his crew chief Giovanni Mattarola. Let's just go back down to Jack. It's felt like one of the hottest Grand Prix of the Netherlands we've ever had in history, and there's been a fair few of them. How are we looking weather-wise at the moment, Jack? We've got a sense in the lunch break that maybe the wind was picking up ever so slightly. Yeah,
the good news is that it has clouded over ever so slightly, and those searing temperatures of yesterday aren't here on the grid, which is excellent news for all of us that want to see some kind of a race here, because there was a big fear yesterday if we were getting temperatures upwards of 35, 36 degrees, then front tyre temperature was going to be such a key point. It was going to be very difficult to see too many moves happening in the latter stages of the race. But with this cloud cover, with the temperature dropping ever so slightly, I think that is definitely going to play into the hands of those that might not be able to get the start. There's an opportunity to attack here, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. Yeah, I think we're all enjoying these relatively slightly cooler conditions, because it was a sauna here, it was an oven here in the northeast Netherlands yesterday. Ambient temperatures that were not shy, far too shy of 40 degrees. We just saw there Alex Marquez, second in the sprint he was here last year. That was, though, from the front row of the grid. He's got a harder challenge this afternoon if he's to repeat that brilliance. I think the message from Gresini Ducati is going to be for Alex: keep it clean, stay out of trouble, make sure you see the checkered flag, just get some race mileage under his belt, which he's not had since that Catalan Grand Prix. Well, Aprilia have been so dominant. They've reigned supreme so far here in the Grand Prix of the Netherlands. Top 4 on the grid for the first time in history. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Paolo Bonora, with Jack.
Yeah, we've now just less than 5 minutes to go before the warm-up lap gets underway, Paolo. Davide Tardozzi just saying there's going to be tracks this season where Ducati is strong, tracks where Aprilia are strong. This is clearly an Aprilia circuit. How important is it that you take full advantage of that?
It's very important, but to be honest, no expectation. We would like to get the feet on the ground. This is an unbelievable result, first, second, third and fourth place in the grid, but each race could be different, it could be difficult, so keep focus on this sprint, but to analyze the data also for tomorrow race, the longer one.
Was there any final words to Jorge and Marco?
No words is necessary. They know everything since 3 races ago, so it was enough, and they are so smart to understand.
Thanks, Paolo. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's been some spectacular self-sabotaging inside that factory Aprilia garage over the last couple of weeks. Aprilia have never won a Grand Prix here in Assen. They've never won a sprint. Ducati have been dominant in the sprint format here since we had our first sprint on Dutch soil back in 2023. The 3 sprint wins, Marco Bezzecchi, Pecco Bagnaia and most recently Marc Marquez. All of them, of course, riding Ducatis at that time.
Ducati have certainly wrestled the momentum away from Aprilia with 4 Grand Prix wins out of the last 6. They could potentially take the Constructors' Championship lead away from them as well over the course of this weekend. Fabio Di Gianantonio, the leading Ducati rider in the championship, 23 points off the World Championship lead. Such a close, competitive championship with 53 points covering the top 7. Who will make their move as we close in on the summer break?
Last weekend, Marco Bezzecchi, for only the 3rd time in the sprint and Grand Prix era, did not trouble the point-scoring places. That's why he saw a big chunk of his advantage slashed in particular by Marc Marquez over the last couple of rounds or so. What was a very healthy 102-point lead he had over Marc at one stage had shrunk down at 240. Here is your front row of the grid there. Not only an Aprilia front row lockout, but an Aprilia lockout of the top 4 places on the grid ahead of this 13-lap sprint here in the Netherlands. 3rd on the grid then is Marco Bezzecchi, still leading the world champs by 8 points. Back-to-back front row starts for our Brno pole sitter Ayer, but for the first time since Phillip Island in 2024, first time on the factory Aprilia, leading away a record-breaking grid for the factory Aprilia squad. Jorge Martin is your pole sitter in Assen.